On the topic of character, Dad, what happens if you're working with somebody or working in a group and someone's trying to undermine your character? How do you defend your reputation when there's group dynamics involved?
You never deviate from your own honesty. That's number one, is you do not let other people dictate your behavior. If somebody is dishonest, then what you do is you just take a deep breath and you rise above it. Don't fight, don't argue, don't attack. Just be a good person. And everybody knows who the good people are. Everybody knows who the quality people are. Most important thing you can do is do your job well. Be honest, be truthful, and then do a good job. And every door will open for you.
Welcome to the Brian Tracy Experience. I am your co-host, Michael Tracy. I'm joined by my brother, David Tracy. Today's theme is about generational success. So David has 2 children. Christina has 3 kids. I have 3 kids. Brian has 4 kids. But it's all become like a very central nexus point of all of our lives. How can we best set up our children for success? How did you think about it when you were raising us, Dad? Maybe you can just give us a high level on that.
Well, the most important thing in generational success is setting an example. Being an example of a person who works hard, saves the money, treats people with respect, continually reads and upgrades their skills so that they become better and better. My mentor, Albert Schweitzer of Africa, said, "You must teach men at the school of example, for they will learn at no other." And so there's nothing more important than the example that you set. The second most important thing, and the reason that most people fail, the reason there's an 80-20 rule, 20% of people earn 80% of the money, 80% of the people have to split up. The reason for that is because parents criticize their children when they're young, and their children grow up with fears of failure. Fears of failure and fears of rejection, I discovered this very early in my career, are the number one reasons why people do not succeed. And so, one of the things that you need to do is constantly give your children encouragement. Constantly encourage them. Please hold on a second here. Constantly encourage them and tell them how good they are. Now you guys, I've always told you how much I love you and how good you are and how you can do anything you put your mind to. And at a young age, you used to ignore me or consider I was a little bit of an old fuddy duddy and that it wasn't true. And look at all the problems in life and the world and so on. But eventually, I wore you down. And eventually, you reach the point where you realize, well, I can do anything I put my mind to. And yes, you can. And when you say that, those wonderful words, I can do it, I can do it, I can do anything I put my mind to. When you say those words to yourself, they become true. Whatever you say to yourself becomes your own truth. So be very careful what you say to your, be very careful what you say to your children. Always tell them how good they are and always tell them how much potential they have. My friend Dennis Waitley, who just passed away, used to say that the average person only uses 3% of their potential. That's according to statistics. When Harvard did studies on their graduates, they asked them, how many of you have set clear written goals for yourself when you leave this university? Only 3%.
Before we go into this topic, I want to just, you said something about how you have to be careful what you say to your children. I've heard that everything that you say to your children eventually becomes their inner monologue. The young formative years, they don't have their own inner monologue. They're forming their sense of self. And so their parents, how they talk to them, how they encourage them, those positive affirmations that they give their children become their formative self-concept
Yes.
from which everything else grows.
In science, they're one of the things that Barbara and I learned, and Barbara is right here with me. One of the things that Barbara and I learned was the tabula rasa theory, and this is so important in psychology.
Children are born into the world as a blank slate, and they're sort of programmed by their parents. And so you can program them one way or another.
And
And
their
you're their affirmations for the first 5 years. So
and their parents write on the slate. Everything the parent says or does or acts or reacts and so on is writing on the child's blank slate. And that becomes their worldview, as you just said, Michael. And so you must be very careful. My parents, when I made a mistake, they would be reminding me 10 years later. I never got free of a mistake because that's the way they were brought up. But you guys would always ask, well, what did you learn? And you said, well, I learned this and I learned that. It was
At a young age, when you learn that you can tell the truth and not get in trouble, and dad would be like, well, what happened? And you just say the unfiltered truth. And then he'd be like, well, what did you learn? And that was that. But later on, as you get older into adulthood and you're, at school or you have a career and something happens, you make a mistake, right? And somebody goes, well, Michael, what happened? And you just give them the unfiltered truth. And they go, great, thank you for telling me. And because of that unfiltered truth, you become seen as honest. Even though you make mistakes, you're at least going to own your mistakes and take responsibility. So had I not had that lesson at an early age, I feel like I might have been tempted to, fudge the truth or not tell the whole truth.
Michael, at what age did your kids understand the concept of truth? Like, how old were they when they figured out, like, when you say tell the truth, what that actually means? Because, like, with Andrew, who's 4, I'll say, tell me the truth. And he'll look at me kind of funny. I'll say, what really happened? Like, what's the real story, Yeah. And so at what age does that?
So David, to answer your question, I mean, just because I have a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old, I have this kind of juxtaposition. I think it's between 5 and 8, where they really figure out that they need to tell the truth, or at least they need to be honest with themselves about certain things. Ryder still kind of struggles a little bit with telling us what exactly happened.
Right.
And unfortunately for her, she's got these 2 older eyewitnesses. But I guess having that experience of having 2 older sisters kind of correct you and be like, that's not the truth, and that's not what happened. And I saw it, I did it. It's fascinating to watch. But yeah, I think I don't know, 5 and 8. But Andrew is pretty sharp, so maybe he's catching a little sooner.
No, he is. And Amalia knows what it is, even if she doesn't tell me what happened. She'll sometimes say, I'm not going to tell you.
Let me intervene here, and it's very important because everybody who's watching is an adult. The 2 most important qualities for success in our world are, number 1, integrity, is that people know that you always tell the truth. That will open more doors for you than you can imagine. And integrity, all the studies have done over the centuries said that you can spend a lifetime building your integrity and lose it forever with one mistake. Because there's an old saying, when I am right, no one remembers, but when I am wrong, no one forgets. Now, the second quality is courage. Winston Churchill said that courage is rightly considered the foremost of the virtues, for upon it all others depend. And it takes courage to be honest. And when you are honest, you will have courage. You will do what needs to be done. You will say what needs to be said. And they're small things, but they're big things. They're the most important things in life is your character.
Well, also, I think with integrity, you have to have integrity to build trust, right? And we need to have trust in our relationship to be able to connect, to be able to influence. All of that's really important.
Most important thing is for your children is to establish a reputation. Now, let me tell you a great lesson that I learned that is so important. I learned it from my great mentor, Dr. Charles Allard, one of the finest men in my life. And I worked for him for almost 2 years as his personal assistant while we were working on projects, many multi-million-dollar projects. He trained me and he taught me and he advised me and he gave me feedback. And I got into a lot of trouble with a couple of projects because I was overconfident. And I remember we sat down. I thought he was going to fire me. I felt absolutely terrible. I'd committed us to millions of dollars of potential losses. And so he asked me, what exactly has happened here? What are the numbers? And I laid it all out for him. It looked like we could lose about $5 or $10 million. And he looked at it and he said, how long have we been working on this project? And I told him, and he said, Brian, and I never forgot these words because I was so upset. He said, Brian, it's a little bit too early to tell. Let's be patient. Let's work it out. What are our potential solutions? And so instead of me feeling I was going to be fired, I started to think, well, we could do this and we could do that. And we found a solution. And in the solution, we turned $1 million, multi-million dollar loss into a multi-million dollar profit. Everything was fine. But one of the most important things to say is with your kids, with your friends, with your employees is, it's a little bit too early to tell. We don't need to jump at the first reaction. We need to sort of be patient and see what happens, because everything that you do in life requires patience, requires persistence, and it never works out the way you thought the first time. And sometimes the second time and the third, the fourth time. What you do is you just keep trying and you keep trying again and you try again. Persistence is the most important single quality of success. I learned later that persistence is self-discipline in action. So the quality of success, there's no greatness in life without persistence. And that means that you have to overcome every single difficulty and problem and expect it. People, when they have difficulties or setbacks, they're surprised. Don't be surprised, you idiot. That is the way life is. You breathe in, you breathe out, you make mistakes. You breathe in.
On the topic of character, Dad, what happens if you're working with somebody or working in a group and someone's trying to undermine your character? How do you defend your reputation when there's group dynamics involved?
You never deviate from your own honesty. That's number one, is you do not let other people dictate your behavior. If somebody is dishonest, you just take a deep breath and you rise above it. Don't fight, don't argue, don't attack. Be a good person. And everybody knows who the good people are. Everybody knows who the quality people are. Most important thing you can do is do your job well. Be honest, be truthful, and then do a good job. And every door will open for you.
It's like cream rising to the top.
Yes.
So exactly. To come back to just wait a little, or it's too early to tell, I feel like that's very wise in the sense that when you're younger, you don't think, or you're always taking some sort of action. You always think you have to be doing something in order to get a result. And as you get older, sometimes the best decision is to not do anything, is to wait a little longer, let the situation unfold a little bit more, let everybody get more informed. Or, for example, David, to your question about character, is if you're consistent with your honesty over time, then you'll rise to the top. Like the leadership, your managers, they'll identify you as being of higher integrity. But in the moment, you might feel compelled to point fingers and have a reaction. And sometimes your reaction is the worst possible thing that you can do in the first place.
It's interesting. I did a webinar yesterday for about 3,000 people, and they were asking what are the keys to success. Said the same things that we're talking about today, is that tell the truth, do a good job, be patient, develop a reputation for if you want something done, give it to him or give it to her. In business, they give you assignments. Do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, and so on. All of the assignments have to do with money. So I made a decision that whenever I was given an assignment, I would do it immediately. I would do it fast. And I'd bring it back. Sometimes I'd work all day and night, weekends and everything. And I would do it much faster than anyone else. And I'd bring it back, and my big boss would say, I didn't need it that quickly, but thank you very much. I remember once I did something, I worked all weekend on it. He asked me on a Friday afternoon, all weekend, and I came back in on Monday. It was all done. It was an analysis of a project and money and in and out and so on. And he said, well, I didn't need it this soon. He said, but thank you. And then the phone rang, and it was the president of a major bank. And the president said, have you got those numbers for me yet? I need to approve this loan to get it in before the end of the year. And he said, well, as a matter of fact, I have them all here. I was sitting there, and they discussed it with the bank, and the bank approved this major loan. And he hung it up, and he said, I guess it was a good idea that you got it done quickly, because I didn't anticipate needing it so much. So I got a reputation for if you want to get something done, give it to him or her. You guys, everybody watching this, that's the greatest reputation you can have, because today people love speed.
Dad, I noticed you're talking a lot about, so like people coming out of grad school or people who are trying to impress their bosses. But what if you're in a leadership position? What if you're managing a team? How do you empower the people under you to have integrity, or to learn to respond instead of react, or to work faster and more efficiently? Like, as a leader in that position, what are things you can do to the people below you on your team?
Well, number one is clarity. You need to be really, really clear with people. You need to take the time to be clear. There's a study that is done every year called A Great Place to Work. And it was done as a single report many years ago. And everybody loved this report. So every year, what they do is they interview thousands of people in different companies and ask them, oh, what do you think about your company? And they came up with the requirements to create a great place to work. And they said the number one response in a great place to work was, I always knew exactly what was expected of me. My boss took the time, coming back to my friend, clarity, to spend the time and go over it and answer questions. Biggest mistake that people make is they hand out an assignment and people are unclear about how to complete the assignment. So always take the time to talk. We say, in order to go faster, go slower. In order to go faster, go slower. And as a leader, your job is to make sure that it's clear. Interesting, I've studied military history for decades. And one of the most important incidents in military history was the Battle of Waterloo. It determined the future of Europe. It was an extraordinary battle. Hundreds of thousands of men were there. Many, tens of thousands were killed. And the Battle of Waterloo was settled by one mistake that Napoleon made. And it was that he had a reserve force on his right flank headed by Marshal Grouchy, who was a leading general of France. And he told Marshal Grouchy to keep a sword in the back of Blucher's 50,000-man German army, which was allied with Wellington. But he didn't tell him to keep him away from the battlefield. He just said to pursue him. Blucher took his force and he swooped his fist, went wide around, and came to the battlefield just at the critical moment where Wellington was on the verge of losing the battle. And Blucher arrived with his 50,000 Prussian troops and destroyed the French army. It was one lack of clarity that cost Napoleon the entirety of Europe. And so it's a big example, but I've studied it. It's the same thing. Take the time to make sure everybody is crystal clear and leave your door open. If you have any questions, come to me immediately. Phone me 7 days a week. I'm at your service. And that's really important. So your favorite word should be clarity, clarity, clarity. So the point is, your best friend, I read a study, by the way, it's one of my favorite studies, where they asked 50 heads of fast-growing small and medium-sized company, what is your most important management tool for your success? 49 of the 50 said it was a yellow pad and notes, where I planned every day and I took notes at every meeting. 49 out of 50 said it was a yellow pad. And I'd always thought that because I use a yellow pad, as you know, all over the place. But it's the same thing. If you want to be successful, get yourself a yellow pad. Write it down. Write it down. Good for you. Write it down. It gives you a form of clarity, power that is unbelievable. Do you know that with the 80-20 rule, which we talked about before, what they found is that the top 20% earn on average 10 times as much as the average of the bottom 80%. There's no difference in talent or ability or opportunity or schooling or anything else. It's just that these people don't have written goals. There's a word I used to say, a statement I said, those who do not have written goals are doomed forever to work for those who do. It's a true statement. As soon as you write down goals, you take control of your life. But without written goals, you always have to work for someone else. You always have to get what falls off the table on the floor after the big people have eaten better portions. So if you want to move into the top 20%, get yourself a yellow pad, write down some goals.
I feel very fortunate that Michael, your kids are older than my kids, and Christina, your kids are even older than Michael's kids. So my daughter's just learning how to write down her goals, but your kids have been probably doing this for some time. Is there something that, on the topic of generational success, is there advice that you would give to me with a 4 and a 6-year-old on how to get your kids clear about what they want from an early age?
We make it a ritual every year. We start in January, and as a family, we've been doing it now for I think 6 or 7 years, where each of my kids has a goal notebook and they write their goals. They have to come up with at least 10 goals for the year. So they each write down their goals and they each reflect on the previous year of the goals that they had set, the ones that they've accomplished, ones that they're going to move forward into the next year to keep working on. I really think setting up a ritual or a tradition with your kids around goal setting makes it something that they get used to and they get into, and then you can increase the frequency and you can start visiting the goals throughout the year, make goals for the school year, things like that.
I found it really helpful to do something similar to that, but then also help them translate those goals that they write down into a daily behavior. What would you have to do every day to get this, to accomplish your goal? And then I find it's very easy then to remind them about those daily behaviors instead of their goals. So you go like, well, remember, we decided that, you do your homework for an hour, after school before you get to watch your television program, to accomplish this goal. So, and then I do the same thing for myself too. I translate goals into daily behaviors, and then I know exactly what I have to do each day. And even though if I'm working on a really big goal for myself, a far off distant goal is kind of just conceptual, but a daily behavior is concrete. Like that's something I can do today. And it's a small piece. Yes. It's an incremental step in the right direction.
So would you recommend writing goals for my kids? Like ask them what their goals are and then write them in the first person on we have a whiteboard that we use for family scheduling, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
One thing I do too, David, is, and I actually encourage everybody to do this, is I have a big giant wall calendar, and each goal either you can have a colored sticker, and then you can, obviously, I love the idea of starting with the end in mind, right? So at the end of the year, you have a goal to accomplish something. You can choose your milestones that you have to hit, every month, every 2 months, every 3 months, and you can track it on the calendar. So when you're planning your life and your actions, you can actually visually see what you have to do and how you're doing it and when, so that you can ultimately achieve the goal. I think it's good for kids too, because it's visual and it's playful and it helps them interact with the goal. And like you're saying, Michael, a daily behavior, it helps them see kind of the steps in between, and maybe they can come up with the behaviors and they can make a checklist, so they're being really proactive to achieve their goals.
The positive reinforcement, seeing you get closer and closer to accomplishing it, having that sense of progress, I think is really, however you can translate that to your kids, is probably the best possible thing. Because then when they see themselves getting closer visually, they're like, oh, I'm on the right track. I should continue. And then even better, they start accelerating.
Yeah, because the future is so abstract for a 4 or 5-year-old, so the daily behaviors thing is big. That's very helpful.
Well, yes, what you see is what you'll be. And when you see yourself as a successful person and you identify with other successful people, it's interesting. People, when they are young, who become successful, study other successful people. And when they grow up, they become like those people. They actually program themselves at a DNA level to be successful. It never occurs to them that they are not going to be really successful in life. It just the thought never, it's so alien to them. I'm the world's most reputable person on goal setting. My book Goals, third edition,
You wrote this one? This is the one?
has sold 1 million copies in 39 languages, and more people have become millionaires as a result of my influence than perhaps any other influence that's out there in sales, in business management, but with regard to goals. Now, where did I learn goals? Well, when I was 18 years old, two friends of mine from high school, we got together. We were talking, Bob and Jeff, and we'll say, well, let's go traveling. Let's go off to see the world. And so we thought that was a great idea. And everybody was going to Europe at that time with backpacks and hitchhiking around Europe. So we said, well, we don't want to go where everybody else is going. Let's go to Africa. So we set that as a goal. And the goal was to depart from Vancouver, British Columbia, and go to Johannesburg. And we didn't know at that time, but it was 17,000 miles. And so we set out, and we had every kind of objection in the world, every single setback and difficulty, which are written in my books. But we eventually got all the way across Canada, across the Atlantic, across all of Europe to Gibraltar, across Gibraltar to Morocco, across Morocco and Algeria to the Sahara Desert, across the Sahara, and eventually worked our way down and got to Johannesburg. 17,000 miles in 9 months. And it never dawned on us, because once you start, all you're doing is scrambling. It's like being thrown in water. All you're doing is trying to stay afloat. But by the end of it, we had accomplished a goal of 17,000 miles. And we were 20 years old. Amazing. And then I finally got back to London a couple of years later. You know my story. And I met my friend Hans, who I'd met in the Sahara, and we decided to go to Singapore. And so we set out from London to Singapore. It was another 17,000 miles, more than halfway around the world. And we got there in about 9 months. Most amazing thing. But when you do something like that, for the rest of your life, you have no doubts. You could set any goal that you want, and you can achieve it. One of the things that we want everybody watching this to do is to become financially successful. And you could become financially successful by doing what other people did to become financially successful. What a great thought. Well, if you do what others do, you get the same result that others get. It's called the law of cause and effect. And so we'll talk about that more in additional talks that we have here.
Often it's much simpler than you make it out to be, right? When you have an idea to accomplish something, you think about all your setbacks and challenges and problems and issues, and then you decide not to take action, or you delay action. And really, if it's just about starting and moving forward and iterating, moving through the dark hallway, finding the door, opening the window, experimenting, trying to do new things, having like all of these unexpected, serendipitous, universal things come in to help you. You find mentors, and I found that throughout my life too. It's like whenever I'm having the hardest challenges and I'm struggling is when I get the best help. It's when I get the most thoughtful people to come and give me the best guidance. And if I hadn't been struggling, then I wouldn't have got that in the first place.
I would add to that, Michael, because I think that there's struggling and hoping somebody helps you, but there's also having the courage to ask for help when you're struggling, right? Like maybe instead of that woman being on the phone, if she stood there next to the bag of dog food and somebody came by and she, asked for them to help her, then that's another approach, because I think we often struggle silently through things. And it's really hard when you're struggling and there's a challenge. It's a very vulnerable place to be, I think. So having the courage to actually ask somebody to help you or tell somebody you're struggling before it has to be obvious, I think is a really powerful thing, especially for your own sense of confidence and self-esteem, but also to connect with other people. Like vulnerability connects us. So that's great. I agree with you.
But we're all works in progress. So it's like something that you can practice. So you practice asking for help on the little things, and then eventually you get better at asking for help on the big things.
And so if you want to become wealthy, we could spend lots of time. What I want you to do is I want you to get a Spiral notebook. This costs $1.59. I joke with my audience. I say that if you can't afford it, your mother will buy it for you because she wants you out of the house anyway. And so get yourself a Spiral notebook, and this is what you do. You follow this exactly. And I took this one out today, and I began. You write down on the front page, you write goals and today's date, and then you write down 10 goals in the present tense as if you had already achieved them. Right? So it's a financial goal, health goal, relationship goal, business goal, whatever it happens to be. Write down the first 10 goals that come to your mind.
Present, positive, personal.
Yes.
Specific, measurable, with a deadline.
Exactly. I achieved this goal. Tomorrow, you then take it to a new page without looking back. These are the 3 magic words: without looking back. And then you write down your 10 goals again. And the next day you turn it to a new page, clean, never look back, write down your 10 goals. Do this every day for a month. And then, as you know, because you've gone through my goal books, Michael, I know that. I found that out. I have been writing these goals all my life, and it works. Everybody that has ever done this exercise said it's incredible. Their lives explode, and especially their finances explode. So my recommendation is to, and then teach other people the 10 goal method, because there's no other method that I've ever found that works faster and more predictably than writing down your 10 goals. And do you know what? According to some of our studies, Lanny did a study on this, only 3% of people will do it. I'm telling you this, I'm enthusiastic about it. I'm living in a $5 million house because of it, and people won't do it. They say, well, maybe, or sometime, or how can I be sure? All it costs you is a Spiral notebook and 5 minutes a day. So please do this, and then report back to us and tell us how you're doing. I promise you, within 30 days, your life will change forever and in a very positive direction.
What if it does work? What did you lose?
What if it does work? Yes, that's the interesting thing. What if it does work? You see, it's an interesting thing that if you do this and you write down your goals in the present tense, what you're saying to yourself is, I can do this. I can do this. I can't achieve the goal instantly, but I can write it down. I could take the first step. And what did Confucius say? Journey of 1,000 leagues begins with a first step. Einstein, wonderful quote, said, nothing happens until someone acts. Nothing happens until someone acts. So your job is to take action. Write it down, write it down, write it down. If it's not in writing, it's a fantasy. It's a wish. It's a hope. It's a dream. It has, we say that a goal that is not in writing, a goal that has no energy behind it. It's like cigarette smoke in a big room. It just kind of disappears. But when you write it down, it becomes concrete. It becomes something you could focus on.
David and Christina, do you have any closing thoughts?
I'd just like to add, Dad, one of my favorite quotes of yours is the difference between dreams and reality, or the distance between dreams and reality is action.
All right, so everyone, write it down, write it down, write it down. And we will be back next week for another episode of the Brian Tracy Experience. Thank you guys all for being here.
Thanks, everybody.